All right.
So our next recipe is the easy pesto meatball. And you can have this as a meal or a snack, I'm thinking. So they provide a great protein boost. And the ingredients Jeremy's going to use in the pesto will give an extra shot of health-promoting nutrients. And this makes these meatballs, when I was looking at the recipe and preparing for this, I would probably call these a nutritional powerhouse. Yeah, they're pretty packed with protein, and we can also play with the fiber in them too.
We're going to jump right into the flavor part of it. Again, I love doing a dish like this because it is not only it might not seem economical, but the idea of meatballs, the idea of like meatloaf and these types of dishes, the intention was to sort of stretch that protein, right? Stretch that meat. So by adding, maybe stale, leftover bread, some extra, maybe eggs, whatever, veg or flavors that you had, so that you can take that small amount of meat and make a larger portion, right? So that's the idea of sort of the economical cooking. I love that. We're going to take that one step further, and we're gonna jam it with even more veg, and we're gonna make this really nice sweet pea and spinach pesto. It's kind of like a pesto, and we're gonna really add a lot of flavor to these meatballs. So let's start off with the pesto part. We're using our blender here. You can definitely use a food processor. And there you go. And then to this, so think of, again, that idea of making a pesto, and we'll have some aromatics in there, right? So some garlic. This is just a clove. Actually, let's go 2 cloves. Why not? If you like garlic, go for the extra. If you don't, then you don't have to. And you could also use garlic powder here too. If you have garlic powder, you don't have fresh garlic, that'll work as well. So a couple cloves in there. I have some ginger. This is fresh ginger. I love the addition of fresh ginger to something that is going to be cooked as well, because you're going to get this really nice blast of flavor. And I'm just going to crush it with the side of my knife. It's been peeled. Crush it with the side of my knife. It's just going to help in the blender to puree a little bit. Fresh ginger, it's not like a super expensive ingredient, but I find that, you buy a whole root, you might use like, 1/10 of it for a recipe, and then it just, gets stuck in the back of your fridge and shrivels into nothing. Use your freezer. That's sort of our favorite place for things like that, to extend the shelf life. That way, you limit the amount of food waste, and you can use it in multiple dishes. So you take your ginger, peel it. You can freeze it whole, or if you want to even chop it up in smaller pieces, freezer bag, pop it in the freezer, and then it grates really easily frozen. Or you can add it to something like this, throw it into a really nice sauce or curry, slow cooked in the oven, and it's fantastic. So definitely utilize your freezer. It's a great little tip on how to extend the shelf life of ingredients. We're going to add, actually, before I get to the frozen, we're going to add some, I was going to add almonds, but I didn't have almonds. So we are pivoting to some pumpkin seeds. And I think this was a nice opportunity to kind of show the versatility of a dish like this, and also give you options, right? The cost of, nuts aren't the cheapest thing. Almonds, walnuts, that's, especially pine nuts. If we're going classic pesto, pine nuts are like, worth their weight in gold, I guess, these days. But using something like pumpkin seeds or even sunflower seeds, which are, a cheaper option, would be great in this. So I'm going with about a 1/4 cup of the pumpkin seeds in here.
I love how you use the word pivoting. It just seems like the buzzword of the last couple of years. So why not pivot in the kitchen too?
Yes, I'm hanging on to all those buzzwords. Love it. We have our lemon. Someone mentioned that they're a 5-6 clove man for garlic. If you want to go 5-6 cloves of garlic, you can definitely do that. That would have a really nice punch for sure. With the lemon, the thing I did want to mention, like citrus, that's one of those things. It's not the cheapest thing either. You know, lemons can be like 70. I think the last time I checked, it was 75 cents. Oh,
With respiratory therapy,
we're in a hospital here. We're gonna get some announcements. Maybe Daniela, I don't know if there's something you want to say about lemons.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I actually have some info on pumpkin seeds. I thought it was a good opportunity to talk about their benefits, and they actually have some anti-inflammatory properties that we're talking a lot about, incorporating anti-inflammatory foods in the diet, and so pumpkin seeds have that. They're also the richest source of magnesium. And magnesium is important with regulating blood pressure, our blood sugar levels, and is also good for heart and bone health. So that was a good choice. And let's not forget fiber and protein. So here's another way of inching closer to the fiber we need during the day.
I love that. So what I was saying about the lemon is, again, maybe not the cheapest ingredient. So utilize the whole thing. So for something like this, wash it well, use the zest. That's something that I think we discard pretty often. That's going to add a ton of lemon flavor. So we're going to, use that. A little micro plane or rasp or micro grater. These are great to have in the kitchen for a number of reasons, but they do a great job sort of removing that outer part of the lemon. And then we're going to go with the juice as well. Which is, it's going to add, obviously, its lemon flavor, a little bit of acidity, but this is a little trick when using any frozen fruits and vegetables. And I know I'm going to touch on it probably more in a sec, but the freezing process, we love frozen fruits and vegetables, obviously for a number of reasons. I know, we're going to get into it, but in terms of the freezing process, sometimes it does dull the flavor a little bit. So adding some acidity to that, doesn't have to come from lemon. It can come from like vinegar as well, or other citrus fruits like lime or orange. That acidity really helps to punch the flavor and brighten up the flavor of those frozen fruits or vegetables that you use. So it's a nice little trick. Now, fresh herbs. Again, they're probably not, might not have them accessible all the time. And I don't know how many people are growing their own herbs on the windowsill. I love that, some shows, you're like, you just grow your own little selection of herbs on the windowsill. Well, that might not be the easiest thing for everyone. So you can definitely use dried in this. If you have dried, we're going to have so much flavor in this already that it doesn't even need any extra. But if you do want to add some like basil or cilantro or parsley, absolutely go for it. Add a little handful to there. And then the main stars of this show, we're leaning on some amazing frozen veg, and we're going to add a cup of frozen peas. Love frozen peas. They, are probably the underdog of the frozen veg world. Kind of put them aside. These are fantastic. In addition, like to soups and stews and chilies and whatnot, but I love adding them to some of these pestos because it has this really nice body and sweetness to your dish. So we're gonna add some frozen peas. We're also gonna add some more greens, frozen spinach to that as well. So about a cup of each.
So yes, both of these vegetables frozen at their peak of freshness. So again, it's an option. It's an option, right? So if you need convenience, if that's your most important factor in your life, then don't feel bad about using frozen. If you, especially at this time of year, it's hard to find locally grown produce. And so when we have an abundance of fresh fruits and vegetables growing, yes, local is good, but frozen is also good to have on hand available for in a pinch like this, or if you're too tired or fatigued.
Daniela, nutritionally speaking, frozen versus fresh, what are we looking at there?
It is similar. It's similar because, like we said, it's frozen at the peak of freshness. So what may cause the nutritional value to decrease is the travel of vegetables and fruit coming from a distance. So the longer it is traveling, the nutritional value is decreasing. So that's why we say purchase local. Many reasons for that, you know, support your local farmer, but also because it has that nutritional value. And then if that's not possible, go for frozen.
Yeah, we love it. I mean, in the shelf life too, you know, most of the frozen veg and fruits can last, you know, 4, 5, 6 months even. So just great, useful item to keep on hand for any dishes that you need to want to add some extra veg to, but we'd love it for something like this. Okay, so we have our flavor: garlic, ginger, pumpkin seed, a little bit of that lemon. Our sort of main ingredients here, we have some frozen peas and some frozen spinach. You can add a little pinch of salt if you want there. We don't need too much, again, because there's so much flavor in here. And I'm going to add maybe a couple tablespoons of olive oil to start. Is that 2 tablespoons? Yes. Okay. Close enough.
That looks like an Italian 2 tablespoons.
Yeah. Heavy wrists when we're pouring. So a little bit of olive oil, and I have a little bit of water on the side. So the key here is I don't want this to be too wet. I'm going to be incorporating this into my ground mixture of meat, and if it's too wet, it's not going to form properly in terms of like the meatball itself. So we're going to break this down until it blends evenly, but it still has some, you know, some resemblance of the peas and the spinach, and it's not like a smoothie consistency. Okay, so I'm going to do this in stages. I might mute myself just so it's not super loud and annoying for everyone. And again, any questions at all, you can jump into the chat and ask. I'll start off also with maybe just a couple tablespoons of water to start, and then add more if I need.
So I'll take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about the garlic that's in the item and the ginger. So the garlic, as you can see, it's crushed and it's not going to be heated yet. So what's happening now that the garlic is crushed is the release of the antioxidant, the sulfur-containing antioxidant can develop. And it's you need to let crushed garlic sit for about 10 minutes for that antioxidant to develop before you throw it onto heat or cook it. So making it part of this process actually is helping that antioxidant develop. And then the ginger, ginger in small amounts not only can help with improving appetite, but it can also help with digestion, your ability to digest. And then if you're someone who's gone through treatment and experienced nausea, ginger is always good to have on hand as a way to kind of help deal with that nausea, reduce the symptom.
Beautiful. So we're almost there. You can see I was pulsing it, adding a little bit of water as I went to get to pretty much this kind of consistency. So it looks like almost like a pesto, but like a drier pesto, right? It's not super liquidy. This is perfect because it's not going to add too much liquid to my meatball mixture. So with this now, what I will do is grab our ground meat. So we're using ground turkey here. You can obviously do ground chicken. If you have ground beef, use ground beef, whatever you want. I've done this almost with, and even like chickpeas, we've done like a ground chickpea, almost like a falafel style. So that gives you a nice option to, you know, if you want to make it vegetarian, you can do that as well. We're using our ground turkey here, and I'm going to add about half of this sort of chunky pesto to that mixture. And then with the rest, I'm going to add my remaining water. About I have about half a cup to this. If you need to add more, you can add more. just so it is almost like a sauce consistency, okay? So it's going to be, you want it to be much, much smoother, almost like you're making a smoothie, I guess. Okay, we're going to add, I'm going to blend that. And that's going to be the sauce it cooks in, okay? So I'll show you here. I'll mute.
Okay, I'll take this opportunity again. So with cancer prevention guidelines telling us to reduce our intake of red meat, ground turkey is a healthier animal protein option that you can incorporate. The guidelines aren't saying we need to go completely vegetarian or vegan. It's just wanting to reduce intake of red meat to about 500 grams a week. So if you think of a serving being about 100 grams or the palm of your hand or the size of a deck of cards, then that would be not more than 5 servings a week. And so then you can also incorporate the ground turkey and the plant proteins we just talked about, or as Jeremy said, about using chickpeas in this recipe.
Right, so that was the remaining half. That's going to be the sauce that we cook it in. And I'll go ahead and put that into either, you can do a baking dish, or this is like an oven-proof pan, saute pan. So I'm going to pour that in. And this is going to concentrate when it's cooked, and it's going to add so much flavor. But we're going to be braising these meatballs, so they're going to stay super sort of moist and juicy, and they won't dry out because they're going to be cooked in this super flavorful sauce. So that was the remaining half. Now with the meatballs, we have that chunkier pesto in there. And for the breadcrumb, you can use any breadcrumbs that you have. That's going to help to, again, absorb some of that excess moisture. And again, that idea of it's stretching out that meatball, right? Stretching out that dish so that you, with that small amount of meat, you can make more portions. Instead of breadcrumbs, and you can definitely use breadcrumbs if you have it on hand. I don't usually have breadcrumbs all the time on hand. I always usually have oats, and I love that as a nice little, we'll use pivot. We're going to see how many times we can say pivot in this show. So pivot from the breadcrumbs to oats does the exact same thing. It's going to help to fill up that meatball mixture. It's going to help to absorb any of that excess moisture, so it's not like super soft. And we love oats for many reasons, right, Gina? So about half a cup I'm going to add here while I'm mixing it up.
Yeah, so oats have a very good source of fiber, especially one that's called beta glucan. And this is a type of soluble fiber that provides many health benefits. And it's even considered, probably calling it something like a prebiotic. Really, prebiotic is a name to some of the fibers in our diet. And a prebiotic is something that helps with gut health. It actually feeds the friendly bacteria in our gut. And so it keeps our gut happy, keeps us happy, can keep us full for longer. So great choice for this recipe as well.
Awesome. So this is the point where you're going to have to jump in, get your hands a little messy, and just mix in those oats or using breadcrumbs and that pesto. It is going to be a little cold, which is actually a good thing, because if we're working with ground meat, our hands are going to warm it up. We want to make sure that we make these meatballs, have them in the oven, the quickest amount of time as possible, because we don't want this to sort of warm up and sit out at room temp for too long. So that is our meatball mixture. And before I start rolling, a little trick, just add a little bit of olive oil to your hands. This is a great moisturizer as well. You can just do this on the daily.
Yes, we should do a segment on food as well. I found information about, non-toxic cleaning, and you're talking about moisturizers. So we should talk about food on a demo for that.
Yeah, absolutely. A little lemon zest behind the neck and a little olive oil on the hands. I think we have a show. So I'm just rolling larger size meatballs here. you know, almost the size of like, I guess, a clementine. You can make them smaller. This is just quicker, so I like it. So you're not here rolling little tiny ones all the time. So for the entire time. So we're gonna make little larger ones and just putting it right into that pan with the sauce. So you'll see how sinking in there, about half of that meatball is submerged and the rest is above. So you're gonna get, you know, some really nice braising going on and some really nice caramelization and a crust on the top part, which is great. You can absolutely, like, if you want to go through the extra steps, searing these in advance, get that crust, then put it in, you can definitely do that. But this is just, it's a nice way to kind of slow cook, I guess, the dish. We're going to roll out a few more here. And if you have,
it's sorry, yeah. Just you know, the idea that if you're using the turkey and if you're using something that is lower in fat, the idea of using it with that sauce is great. As you mentioned earlier, it kind of maintains the moisture, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. You know, great if you're using lean cuts, like you said. And then also, you know, if you want, maybe you don't want, you know, something that has a, you know, crust on the outside. Maybe you want something a little bit softer to enjoy. You know, if, I guess, if you have any other side effects that give you challenges with you know, eating and swallowing, braising is a great way to make sort of your meats and your ingredients a little bit on the softer side, and then it has this extra sauce that you're cooking it in, which is great. All right, so last two. I know it's not super exciting to watch me just roll meatballs, but we're almost done.
I'm super impressed at how perfect each one is. I think if I were making that, they probably start small and perfect and then end up being more like a big blob.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the case. I'm sure if you looked at these a little closer, but I think that's a good point to get them as close to even as possible, especially with meat, because you want them to cook evenly. Now these are going to go into the oven, 400 degrees, for about 25 minutes to 30 minutes. Again, depending on the size of the meatball that you make, you might need to cook them a little longer. Anytime you're cooking meat, though, especially poultry, use a food thermometer, and you can take one out if you're not sure. Temp the middle of the meatball. You can take it out and make sure you're not temping the sauce, because it's going to be a little different. You want to temp the middle of the meatball and make sure that it's at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit on that. Okay, so always a good rule of thumb when you're cooking meat. That's going to go in the oven. I'm going to wash my hands. So I don't know if you have another tip. Yeah.
Sure. I was going to build upon the digital thermometer. I think that is probably a very important tool if you have anything in the kitchen. It's good to have that from a food safety perspective, because it takes the guesswork out of, is something cooked, is it not cooked, especially with ground meat. You don't want to fool around with that. So that was an excellent tip. The other thing I wanted to bring up is how this is a great way of controlling portions. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about portion control, but if you have a great appetite or it's too good and, you know, you're hungry, this is a great way of limiting yourself to one or two. It's also great to use as a snack. So maybe dinner's 2 hours away, you need a snack of something. So have one of these meatballs, and that'll curb your appetite, and then you won't overeat at dinner. On the flip side, if your appetite is low, then, you know, make them a little smaller, or maybe someone can make them for you a little smaller and they can be frozen. You can take them out and have it that way. And you just have to have one or two on the plate, and they're so pretty. They're so pretty. So when you have a low appetite, you want to try to appeal to your other senses. So that's something else to consider there.
Awesome. All right. So here we go. This is our pesto meatballs after about 30 minutes in the oven. And you can add, again, that sauce. You have this really, really nice pesto sauce, that pea and spinach pesto sauce on the bottom. So you can baste it a little bit if you want on top. Really, really nice crust. And I'm going to go ahead and cut into one of them. And you have, again, the smell is amazing. Like, you have this incredible smell but the super, yeah, it's fallen off, but it still has this really, really nice moisture to it. Like it hasn't dried out because of that braising, because it has been slow cooking in this pesto sauce. But there you go. Pretty easy. And again, make, double the batch if you want, and these will freeze exceptionally well. One's a little side. All right. So there's our easy sweet pea pesto meatballs.